guys, so we are here with episode 2 of Things Everybody Should Know. Today's conversation might be a little dark and morbid for some of you, but not for the rest of us. I've got my bestie Nandini with me, who's also a lawyer, and we're going to discuss some legal things today. This is actually a conversation that we had pre-pandemic, through the pandemic,
Yes.
and now. So this video is like 3 years in the making, guys. So yeah, watch it. So we are discussing wills today and whether everybody should have a will, at what age you should have a will, and like basically prepping for death at any age. I remember when we had this conversation pre-pandemic, you were like, the first time I told you, should I make a will? And you were like,
What are you talking
yeah,
about?
what are you talking about? And then the pandemic happened and we were like, we should all be making wills, right?
Yeah, we should at least just be getting our, things together and realizing what we have and sorting out our assets and knowing what we have.
I've seen a lot of people not know, like their spouses or their family has no idea where their finances are or where their assets are. And I feel like having a will is just like eases it for, whoever you've left things to in life, whether you're young, whether you're older. I just feel like everyone should have a will was my thought process pre-pandemic and now. And I just feel like it's important because today I think people are saving at a younger age. People are earning much more than, like a lot of our parents' generation did. And people actually have assets, and then you don't, like in my case, like Vaibhav or my parents probably don't know why each and every asset I own is. So if I were to suddenly drop dead, I feel like they would be lost as to, what is where.
Yeah. So I don't think we'll focus on everybody should make a will, because that may not be, entirely correct. But let me just start by saying this is just practical advice.
This is two friends chatting.
And, I don't intend to, give you a legal discourse or a sermon or something like that. But just over the course of the last 2 years, based on what I've seen, what I think is practically, practical advice for people is this, that between my family and friends, a lot of people have lost loved ones over the last few years very suddenly. And the thing that baffles them the most is, they don't know what that person left behind.
Exactly.
And it's not only to do with a will, but to just start with, if we just know what we have in terms of bank accounts, bank lockers, your shares, your mutual funds, even your vehicles, your properties, you can just start by, gathering your documentation, putting it down, putting the details down in a little booklet or a handbook. Where bank accounts and things like that are concerned, I would suggest at least having a nominee, because while the nominee doesn't step into your shoes, the nominee can at least function your account if required. So I think the first step is just getting things together, putting it down.
So saying like make basically a document where you kind of put down everything you think you
or a booklet, with your details.
Yeah.
And even important numbers, your CA's number, your lawyer's number.
Right. Or someone who handles your investments.
Someone who handles your investments, so that if you were to, if you have people dependent on you, then it will not be so complicated for them to access this kind of information. And you should let them know that I have this little piece of this little booklet, and it's an XYZ place. So I just think the first step is putting everything
irrespective,
together.
whether you want to make a will or not, make a booklet where you list down everything that you have of value, kind of to tell people and where it is. I mean, so that they know it's easily accessible.
Or insurance documents.
Right.
Club memberships. Right. Everything should just, be detailed.
Like in a methodical manner, so that people can just see it.
So, and then you will also realize what is missing. If a certain property document is missing, you will know.
Right.
So I think the trick is to just be organized and at least know what you have and put it down in one place. And then coming to a will. So a will is basically your intention. It's a declaration of a person of what he or she intends on doing with his or her property after she or he die.
Right. So
it is just stating your intention on what should be done with each of your assets or your property. So it's pretty straightforward. It's not complicated, and there are some real misconceptions about a will. It doesn't only have to be an extremely wealthy person who sits down to make a will.
Yeah, that's another thing you always hear. Now, what do I have to leave in a will?
No,
Yeah.
so it doesn't have to be somebody very old, essentially. And it's not a bad thing, if you sit down to make a will, because some people, it's really strange, but people do believe that if you sit down to make a will, you're giving up your rights in certain properties. But a will only comes to life after you die. You're not giving up any rights, etc., by making a will. And I would suggest who make a will for somebody who actually does have people who are dependent on them.
Right.
That would be more practical. You don't have to hurry it up, and like everybody doesn't have to, sit and make a will. But if you are in that kind of a situation where people are financially dependent on you, then it makes sense to have a will, because it's not only for very wealthy people.
Right.
There have been instances in the last few months itself where somebody has died without a will. They have a fair amount of assets or property, and the legal heirs, for them to prove
that
before
they are
the
the legal heirs,
building, the banks, that we are the only legal heirs, becomes very problematic, and then you have to go through a legal process.
That was my reasoning for doing it myself, where I thought I want to do it because I just feel like it's easier for the people that you leave stuff to, like they can execute it easily with a will.
Yes.
There's also more clarity on who gets what, if that's a question mark in anyone's
that's
head.
a big thing, because if you die without leaving a will, then your estate means everything that you leave behind is governed by your personal law,
right?
Which is different for people in India, primarily based on your religion.
Right.
So you may not necessarily want to leave it in that fashion, and if you have a specific idea of who you want to secure, or who you want to give what to, it may be a charity, it may be your parents, it may be anybody, and even sentimental things. It doesn't have to be of great value, but if you have this a carpet or an artifact or anything,
or a family heirloom that gets passed along, it can, or as you said, it has sentimental value. It may not be very valuable in monetary terms, but you can still kind of decide who gets that.
Right. So it's a will covers your movable as well as immovable properties.
So this was actually my next question, as to what can you include in a will?
Everything. Whatever you own. So your jewelry, your property, your rights in a particular property. But you have to be very careful when you're making a will about giving what is only yours. You can't, you can't begin to
give someone else's right.
Yeah, obviously. So you have to know if you jointly hold a property with somebody, then you have to know what you're entitled to part with and not.
But there's no valuation system, right? Like as you said, it can be anything. Like can I leave my Apple Watch to someone in my will? Or is that
I think, of course.
I'm just asking hypothetically because that's the first thing I saw.
Yeah, it's
or like a small, something like this, which it is jewelry, but it's not like a big piece of jewelry, and I want someone to have this as a sentimental thing. Then that is doable.
Yes, of course.
So literally you can actually put anything that belongs to you.
Put their jewelry. It's the same as putting in your jewelry or your silver or, household.
I want you to know my Apple Watch will go to you.
Oh, thanks. I need an upgrade.
I just feel like, I'm glad we're doing this, because I feel like often people view this as a very heavy conversation, or as why would you make a will? Are you thinking of it's like you're asking for death, or you know what I mean?
I don't know why it's taboo, but it doesn't
even when I told my parents that I'm thinking of making my will, their reactions were like, why would you make a will?
It's an awkward conversation to tell a grandparent or a parent.
They'd be why you at this age, and whatever, and I'm like, it's not about me wanting to die, but anything can happen to anyone, and it's just about being prepared or having that documentation to ease anyone else's life post that.
And it's fairly simple, and particularly if you have people who would benefit from avoiding this a complicated procedure.
Why wouldn't you do it?
If you do have a will and you're bequeathing immovable property, in the city of Bombay, you need to get that, not you, but once the person who makes the will dies, his heirs do have to get that will probated, which means, get the court to certify that
Right.
the will is
So
in
what
fact
is
valid.
the procedure to actually make a will? If you were to make, someone wants to make a will, what is the procedure, and is there like a cost? Does it depend on the valuation of the properties or stuff in the will, or is it a standard fixed fee, or is it just the registration?
Okay, so the basic legal requirements to make a will are set out in the Indian Succession Act. It applies to almost everybody. It's fairly simple. You need to be of sound mind. You cannot be a minor. You have to be above 18 years of age. It needs to be written. You need to have two witnesses who can confirm that they see the testator signing the will. You have to basically state that you are of sound mind. You are not being forced or coerced
Right.
to make this will. You can list down your assets, your, whatever you own, and list them out clearly. And then you can state who you intend to bequeath which property to,
Right.
in what share. You can appoint a really responsible person or a trusted person to be the executor of that will.
That means that person conveys to the people.
Yeah, so ideally you would, give a copy of your will or the original will to that person. Ensure that the witnesses as well as the executor, are likely to outlive you.
Right.
The people who are witnessing your will cannot be beneficiaries to your will. So it should be people who who you're not
Right.
giving things to. And
in terms of cost?
So that would totally depend. I mean, you can sit, if you don't have anything very complicated, you can put it down on a piece of paper. But I would strongly advise to have some kind of, legal help or
Right.
advice. But
that will vary from lawyer to lawyer,
it'll
depending
vary
on
from
whoever
lawyer to
you
lawyer.
get
It'll
on.
depend on how complicated or,
Right.
there are various things you can do. I mean, people.
But there's no like fee for registration of the will.
So you can register a will, but again, it's not compulsory. It's
Right.
not a legal requirement.
Then the next question I had was kind of like, as a young person, someone like me, right now today I'm 35. If I make a will today, is it valid? Like, if I don't update it or modify it, is there a requirement like, after every 10 years you've got to like modify it, or because obviously things are going to change, right? Or like, how does that work?
So before I get on to that, I would like to say that there are certain essentials that you do put into a will.
Right.
So you don't, you just don't sit and jot it down,
Yeah.
On a piece of paper and have two people sign it and say, okay, this is my will. There are certain things, like I said earlier, that you need to have in a will. You need to state that you weren't coerced. This is being done by your own free will. You need to state that you're of sound mind. If there's any doubt about that, like for very, very aged people, or, people who do have problems in general, then you can have one of the witnesses be a doctor, or you can affix a doctor's certificate. So you will need some sort of guidance,
Right.
some sort of legal guidance, or you'll need to look into it a little more rather than saying, okay,
write it down yourself.
let's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
write it down ourselves. But coming to, you don't need to revise your will or redo your will every few years. Generally, we state that this is my last will and testament. So your will of today is your last will. If you make a will tomorrow, then it would be ideal to state that I revoke the previous will.
Right.
And this is my last will and testament. So the previous
So
one
it's not kind of
automatically-
like a modification, it's a new bit.
So you can modify as well by way of a document called a codicil.
Right.
So today you have a will, and you decided to give this to me and something else to somebody else, and then the circumstances change, and you can thereafter execute a document called a codicil.
Right.
Again, you will have to sign it in the presence of two witnesses who see you sign it.
Right.
And you could say that, the terms of the will dated blah remain the same. And additionally,
This is what I add. Yeah, so I guess for younger people, that's more relevant, because if you have more assets as you grow older, you just add more to that will, if you're not really changing anything drastically.
And it's, exactly. And, if 10 years later your circumstances change completely, like if you have children, then you can
completely
think
change
of-
it and start a new will.
Exactly.
Next question. What do I do with my will once I make it? Like, who should I be giving it to? Should I be giving it to the beneficiary? Should I just be giving it to the executor? Because I find very often, people ask this question and they don't know, like, very often when someone dies and like, I've heard my mom's generation, like parents' generation say it, like, was there a will? And then the people are like, I don't know if there was a will. So I always feel like, if you make a will, like the right people should know where it is.
Right. If you have that kind of doubt, that you don't know if the will come into the right hands, then you can appoint 2 executors. You can give one copy to one and another to the other. And you can inform the beneficiaries that, listen, this is...
That I've made a will.
I made a will and this is what it states and these are the people that it's with. It depends on your...
wishes,
relationships. If you have a very hostile situation, you may want to leave the will with your lawyer, you may want to leave it with your CA. Totally depends on each person's personal situation.
Okay, so I think those are all the questions I had about wills, and I feel like, as you said rightly, that maybe a will is not for everyone. Maybe you should be making a booklet to start with.
Yes.
And then as you have more assets, or you think you are like someone that needs a will, you should, kind of make one or not. Or I guess consult a lawyer and figure out if you're the right person for it or not. But I feel like this video has been very helpful, at least for me, and I think a lot of people watching, to understand what a will is, and if you want to make one, how to make one, etc., etc. So thank you for doing this with me.
Not at all, Sherry.
And if you guys have any more questions, leave them in the comments. I'll try and get Nan to take a look at them and answer them if there's anything that anyone has
Anything
further
general.
questions, or general questions about making wills. We will try and answer those for you. Thank you for watching. See you guys.
Bye.